there are stories buried deep beneath the ocean. Secrets that no one can truly touch, remaining only through tales passed down and fragmented memories found in ancient manuscripts. Atlantis, a name that for generations has both fascinated and puzzled humankind. A lost civilization buried beneath time? Or merely a beautiful myth woven by imagination? Today, we're diving into that very question, exploring, questioning, and perhaps, even believing. Now, dim the lights, sink into your seat, and relax. Because what you're about to hear may change the way you see human history. If you enjoy stories like this, unsolved mysteries, lost relics, forgotten civilizations, then hit subscribe and drop a like to let YouTube know you want to see more of this kind of content.
Today, we delve into a story that blends legend, mythology, history, geography, space exploration, and even conspiracies surrounding both the past and present of our world. When people think of Atlantis, most imagine an underwater city with structures and culture resembling ancient Greece. This is understandable, as everything we know about Atlantis comes from the writings of the great Greek philosopher Plato, who recounted the story of Atlantis through the character Critias. And from here, the story goes as follows: in a distant mountain range lived a family led by Evener. They had a single daughter named Cleito. When she reached adolescence, her parents passed away. Later, a beloved Poseidon fell in love with her. They made love behind the mountains, and through their union, the landscape changed. Where their love blossomed, land and sea merged into concentric circles, 2 rings of land and 3 of water. As a god, Poseidon had no difficulty reshaping the earth. He created 2 springs from beneath the ground, one of hot water and one of cold, allowing vegetation to flourish abundantly. He then fathered 5 pairs of male twins, dividing the land into 10 kingdoms, assigning one to each son to rule. The eldest was given the grandest capital and crowned king. This son was Atlas, and eventually, the ocean was named after him. The capital, known as Atlas or Atlantis, was designed with a central zone, 2 rings of land, and 3 rings of water, separating the land from the center. To the south of the city lay a seaport, where maritime trade reached the kingdom. The city was built with white, black, and red stones, was home to many elephants, and was surrounded by a vast landscape of sea and majestic mountains. Thus, the capital of Atlantis was drawn as a magnificent focal point of the world. However, from here, we return to reality. The account of Critias or Plato was based on stories passed down from Solon. Solon, a distant relative of Plato, lived around 630 BC. He was a statesman and a poet, and during a 10-year journey, he visited Egypt, where a priest told him the story of a magnificent city lost to death. According to the priest, Atlantis once thrived and prospered beyond measure, but was then swept away by water 9,000 years earlier. Therefore, the story of Atlantis, its rise and fall, occurred around 11,600 years ago and was recounted by an Egyptian. At this point, the connection between Atlantis, a legendary city, and both myth and reality began to take shape. The tale of a catastrophe from the sea that drowned humanity is no stranger to anyone. However, when we talk about the similarities among religious beliefs, the moment we mention the Great Flood, another story emerges. Nearly every religion or belief system contains myths of massive floods wiping out life, followed by the rebirth of all things. When scientists searched for traces of the past within Earth's geological layers, they discovered a time when humanity was engulfed in ice, a glacial period known as the Younger Dryas that lasted about 1,300 years, plunging the entire northern hemisphere into icy conditions. During this period, humans managed to survive despite the harsh climate. Evidence of Homo sapiens from this era can be found in ancient artifacts discovered across the globe. However, the Younger Dryas itself isn't the most frightening part. In fact, What followed the Younger Dryas is far more terrifying. Various theories attempt to explain its end. One posits that Earth's orbit returned to a more circular shape after being stretched into an ellipse, while another suggests that a massive comet struck the northern hemisphere around 12,600 years ago. These hypotheses continue to challenge and captivate scientists today. No matter what, after 1,300 years, the Younger Dryas finally came to an end, ushering in a warm period for Earth. And with this new warmth, the ice melted, flooding the world in great deluges. According to what Solon heard from the Egyptian priests, that great flood happened at the exact time Atlantis was said to have sunk. The Sahara is a place few people can reach due to its extreme weather conditions and its distance from sources of life. To survive in the world's largest desert, we need many favorable conditions. Therefore, in the end, this remains a place full of mysteries that humanity has yet to truly uncover, like the reason why traces of the sea can be found in the middle of a desert. One especially mysterious site is the area known as the Eye of the Sahara. The Eye of the Sahara, or the Rikat structure, is the name given to a vast area with a diameter of 40 kilometers, featuring a central circular landmass surrounded by two concentric rings separated by three sunken zones. In these sunken zones lie massive patches of white salt, identified as remnants of a former seaport. Moreover, the Rikat structure is also home to a large number of Acheulean artifacts. Not only that, this region lies south of the Atlas Mountains and shows traces of a great river that flowed into the Rikat area between 11,000 and 5,000 years ago, creating ideal conditions for human habitation during that time. When we compare the design of Atlantis with what remains at the Eye of the Sahara, we can't help but wonder, is this resemblance purely coincidental? It surely can't be. The Sahara Desert cannot support life. It is, after all, a desert. For a civilization to thrive there, it must have existed during the period from 11,000 to 5,000 years ago, when the river from the Atlas Mountains was still flowing. Only then could life be sustained. Isn't that right? When people mention the Sahara, most think of the world's largest desert. This is a place with harsh climate conditions and seemingly incapable of sustaining life. However, not many might know that it was once an immense plain. We're all familiar with the concept of 4 seasons, which mainly occur in temperate and polar zones, while tropical zones typically experience a 2-season climate. The reason Earth has 4 seasons is due to its tilted axis. Earth's rotation axis is not at a perfect 90-degree angle but tilted at 23 degrees. This tilt causes one pole to always be closer to the sun than the other, creating seasonal changes throughout the year. This axial tilt is created and maintained by the moon, or more precisely, by the moon's formation. According to astronomers, the moon is the remnant of the greatest impact ever to occur on Earth, a collision between two planetary bodies during the early formation of the solar system. The primordial Earth was struck by a Mars-sized planet, named Theia, resulting in a massive explosion. Most of Theia's matter was captured by Earth's immense gravity. However, the debris from the collision entered Earth's gravitational field and over millions of years gradually coalesced into the moon as we know it today. That impact caused Earth's axial tilt. And thanks to the moon's gravity, this tilt has remained stable until now. The reason we say temporarily is because this axis is not entirely fixed, it wobbles as Earth orbits the Sun. These changes in axial tilt cause shifts in solar exposure across various regions, leading to climate changes. Furthermore, Earth's orbit itself shifts between elliptical and circular shapes over cycles, causing massive climate changes on a global scale. And now we return to the Sahara Desert. Due to these cyclical climate shifts, the place we now call the world's largest desert was once a lush green land, with plants, a mild climate, and resembled savannas more than a desert during this period. The Sahara once held the Earth's largest lakes, rich vegetation, and large animals. Human development has always depended on the presence of lakes, rivers, or seas. Additionally, there are dozens of carvings and drawings of animals found in regions surrounding the Sahara. Notably, in Tadrart Acacus, researchers have discovered depictions of giraffes and leopards, creatures that no longer exist in the Sahara today. Thus, the Sahara was once a thriving cradle for life and could have supported ancient civilizations. However, this alone is not enough to confirm that the civilization of Atlantis could have developed there. For Atlantis to have existed, it must have emerged during the time when the Sahara was still lush, meaning it would have to be older than 5,000 years ago. This implies that it predates even the Mesopotamian and ancient Egyptian civilizations. However, if we take the words of Solon and Plato as a basis, the civilization of Atlantis would have existed around 11,600 years ago, which means it would still fall within the period when the Sahara Desert was green with grass. And with the discovery of the Göbekli Tepe archaeological site, dated to be over 12,000 years old, along with traces linked to both Mesopotamian and ancient Egyptian civilizations, we have further grounds to believe that a human civilization existed prior to any historical records currently available to us. In short, the existence of Göbekli Tepe completely debunks the belief that ancient civilizations did not exist. If Atlantis was located at the Rikat structure, this capital would have existed more than 11,600 years ago. Therefore, when the Younger Dryas ended and the ice melted, raising sea levels, everything would have been submerged in a great flood. When we look at the Sahara Desert, we are not lacking evidence showing that the area was once swept across by a massive tsunami from the Mediterranean to the Atlantic. The long ripple-like lines stretching for kilometers are not sand dunes but the result of wave action, similar to sand on a beach. Additionally, many marine animal remains dated up to 14,000 years ago have been found in the desert. Therefore, the possibility that a great flood caused by the Younger Dryas buried Atlantis beneath the waves is highly plausible. The key point here is that, according to Plato's account, Atlantis did not sink to the bottom of the sea. Instead, the path to Atlantis became inaccessible, all routes buried in mud, making it impossible to reach the city from the sea. According to Egyptian mythology, before all creation, there was only a massive, violent ocean called Nun. It was only afterward that the god Adam was born and created the world. If Atlantis existed, then perhaps Egypt's concept of this primordial ocean was in fact the great flood from the Younger Dryas that swept Atlantis away. Furthermore, the Rikat structure was formed by a volcanic eruption that failed to complete, leaving behind massive deposits of earth and stone that were gradually eroded over time to form the circular ring-like shapes we see today. Being born from volcanic activity, the Rikat structure naturally exhibits the unstable flow of water, meaning it has both hot and cold springs, just like in the legend of Persizan and his Day of Passion. Of course, when mythology begins to edge too close to reality, we are entirely within our rights to disbelieve. However, we also cannot ignore that North Africa still holds many mysteries we have yet to explain. Most notably, how the pyramids were built, and the presence of water erosion marks on the base of the Sphinx, indicating that the statue existed when the Sahara still had rainfall, several thousand years ago. This directly implies it could have existed even before ancient Egyptian civilization. Regardless, when we piece the clues together, we can hypothesize what happened to Atlantis when placed at the Rikat structure over 11,000 years ago, when the Earth was still at its farthest distance from the Sun due to its elliptical orbit. The world was covered in ice, and the weather was extremely harsh. However, prior to that, there existed a highly advanced civilization in the land that we now call North Africa. This was the civilization of Atlantis. Atlantis was the capital of this civilization, located at the Rikat structure, a dormant volcanic crater with a system of rivers, canals, and seaports perfect for driving an economy to its peak of prosperity. Beyond Atlantis, There were other civilizations also thriving, some of which left pyramids scattered around the world that we still see today. The prosperity of Atlantis seemed destined to last forever, until the Earth returned to its circular orbit, melting the polar ice caps, ending the Ice Age, raising sea levels, and pushing northern waters toward the tropical belt, triggering massive tides and tsunamis across many regions. The Great Flood swept from the Mediterranean through North Africa, wiping out the lush savanna that once flourished there, and destroyed everything, including the capital, Atlantis. The Great Flood from the Younger Dryas marked the end of all those civilizations, plunging humanity back into the Bronze Age. Thousands of years later, the civilizations of Egypt and Mesopotamia would rise again. The Egyptian civilization retained the tale of the Great Flood, of a kingdom that once thrived in North Africa, so prosperous that it was described as the child of the sea god. Later, a priest recounted that story to Solon, of the royal family of Petros, then passed down by Plato through the dialogue of Critias and handed to later generations as legend. Additionally,
And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any future content. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.